Hi everyone, I'm Linda Braun and I'm here with Shannon Peterson, who I'll make introduce herself in a minute. And we're here to talk about our new book that we edited for YALSA called, you can see it on the screen, Putting Teens First in Library Services, a Roadmap. Shannon, tell everybody a little bit about who you are.
Sure. So I'm Shannon Peterson. I'm Youth Services Manager for Kitsap Regional Library, which is a kind of semi-rural library system just across the Sound from Seattle.
Great, thanks. And like I said, I'm Linda Braun, and I'm also a CE consultant and also work as an independent learning consultant. So I work with lots of different libraries to help them figure out how to put teens first in library services and other out-of-school time environments. So we wrote this book with others. We actually edited the book. We did not write it specifically, but it came out of the Future of Library Services for and with Teens report that was published by YALSA in 2014, January of 2014. And the Future of Library Services for and with Teens set forth a set of recommendations and a framework for where library services for teens should be headed and the kinds of things that teens need in the world today in order to grow up successfully. So things like library staff working with community partners and thinking about various literacies and social and justice and racial equity and those kinds of things. And so as the years have gone by, YALSA, Shannon and I and others have realized that there are some foundational ideas that would be really helpful from the Futures report to help libraries move forward with the ideas expressed there. So that's sort of where the book came from. Shannon, what else do you want to say about that?
I'd just say quickly, I was actually YALSA president when the report was kind of in draft mode and came out, and working on the board with that. And I think that what that report did was bring together so many big ideas that were sort of floating around both in library world and after school space, and kind of put them all in one place and give us a vocabulary for a lot of the work that we knew that we were working on and doing. And it just helped us, I think, be a little more intentional about the future of where we're headed and kind of the stuff that had become part of a teen librarian's job accidentally, stuff you didn't learn in library school and maybe weren't thinking about in library school, at least when I was in library school. So I guess kind of along with that, as Linda mentioned, it's a framework and sort of introduce this new vocabulary, but there's definitely a lot of room to further explore these ideas. And that's why I'm so excited about this title and working with some of the awesome authors that we got to work with to kind of flesh this out.
That's great. Yeah, so like we said, it's an edited volume and there's 5 chapters, and we're going to talk a little bit about each of the chapters. And I also want to mention that Maureen Hartman, who was one of the co-authors of the Futures report, which is available online, one of the co-authors of the Futures report, Maureen Hartman, wrote the introduction. So let's start talking about the chapters. The first one is on continuous learning. So what do you think of, what do you remember most about that, Shannon?
Okay, so continuous learning was written by Megan Burton, who's actually a teen services librarian for Kitsap Regional Library where I work. And I think this chapter does an amazing job of setting the stage of themes that you'll see throughout the book. So, that framework word comes up for me again. A lot of this work is sort of taking these big concepts and figuring out how to play with them in your local area. And we started with this chapter, and Megan did an amazing job of kind of setting the stage of kind of where teens are headed, and the landscape for teens and the landscape that they find themselves in libraries as a result, and sort of the learning that you need to constantly be doing to adapt and change with teens and with your community. So that's kind of a high level look at what she was looking at. What I really love about her chapter is, of course, there's a lot of focus on the individual learning that you need to do, but also sort of the advocacy that you need to do to help others understand the importance of that adapting with your community and adapting with teens. So bringing others in your organization on board and kind of advocating for the support that you need and the time and capacity that you need to be able to do future focused library work.
I love that point a lot. And I think one of the things that's so exciting to me as I think about this, and as you were just talking, is the idea that, you know, this report is 3.5 years old. We're recording this in June 2017, and things haven't changed drastically, but I am still learning. You are still learning, like the way it's always evolving. So thinking about some of the ideas that Megan presents about reflecting on your learning and practicing and all of that, we are just always learning, and she really does set a great frame for that, and within the context as well of the Futures Report. So then our second chapter is by Crystal Martin, and she wrote about youth learning, and I love that, like how it moves from library staff learning to youth learning. And she talks a lot about connected learning, and we should probably say that every chapter, I think, references in some way connected learning, which is really great. And connected learning is, you'll read in the chapters, but if you're not familiar with it, the idea that we can work with youth to help them take what they're most interested in and learn about that thing, but also gain all different kinds of skills through focusing on fashion or radio recording or mechanics or whatever, and doing it in a way that they're connecting with peers, they're connecting with adults, they're connecting with academics. And so it's a really exciting framework. So Crystal looks at connected learning, but she also looks at DIY spaces and all different kinds of ways that youth learn. And then my favorite part, or one of my favorite parts of the chapter, is how she gives very specific examples of how this is playing out in different kinds of libraries. So she looks at rural, small, urban, and suburban libraries and gives really great examples. And I think that shows how you can customize the ideas of youth learning and connected learning to all different types of libraries. And it doesn't cost a lot of money. It costs brain power to think about how to actually create these experiences.
Yeah, I mean, Crystal does such an amazing job of connected learning can feel so big and so nebulous. And, you know, I think it's easy to see that. And then it's also easy to say like, oh, I've been doing connected learning for years. So I think both of those things are probably true in a lot of cases, but she does such a great job of kind of pulling out really super practical pieces and showing kind of what it is and what it isn't, and giving practical ideas for moving it forward. And I think along with that learning, like what I see libraries doing now in a way that they maybe haven't done before with connected learning is helping teens transfer that. So we've always done kind of interest-based stuff, but like helping teens understand like the connection between that learning and work to the school environment or their future college and career goals and that kind of thing. That's so magic. I love seeing that work happening.
That's great. I love magic. This book is magic. When you read it, it will just be a magical experience.
Unicorn.
So then we have the chapter on youth voice by Juan Rubio. And do you have like something well, actually, I'm going to put you on the spot, Shannon. How do you describe youth voice, or how would you define youth voice to people?
Thank you for putting me on the spot. So youth voice in this chapter, I think youth voice is a term that comes up a lot, and it's one of those terms that can feel like it means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And I think what Juan did a great job with is not only, again, showing really practical examples of like what youth voice can look like in after school work, but also through that kind of showing exactly what it is and isn't. Sorry, that was a crazy sentence. So with youth voice, it's not necessarily like saying like teens are in charge, like you run the library now, whatever. It's kind of giving teens a safe space, and with that sort of expectations for how they should interact with each other and with you, and giving them parameters on what you're doing, giving them a menu of what's possible, and then helping them work with you, alongside with you, to kind of develop whatever it is that they're interested in. So you're still a big part of the process, and you're really coaching them from the side rather than just kind of giving them free rein, if that makes sense. And he just kind of teases that out through the chapter and shows really concrete examples of what each of those pieces look like. Is there anything that stood out to you about his chapter?
Well, so that is great, and I agree totally. Like, he really explains how you work with youth as opposed to what you were just saying. So I'm not going to repeat what you just said. But the other thing is, he has these case studies that are embedded throughout the chapter. So he'll talk about something, you know, writes about something, and then he says, well, here's an example of it in real life. And one of my favorites is that balance between giving the youth the opportunity to experience something and lead something, but then also noticing when you know it's not going well, and you want to figure out when you engage and how you balance and how you help youth to fail, but also not be a failure. And right. So he has some really great case studies about how you engage with youth in a way that keeps them going, that helps them to understand, to learn, and to build whatever, a program or an activity or whatever, but then also how to give them enough support that they're just not getting frustrated and having an experience. So I really love that part. And he also is really funny with his case study titles. But he has a good sense of humor in there. And then we have our chapter on a community engagement, which is a huge topic, and I think one that people often talk about but don't necessarily know exactly what it means. And so I think one of the things that this chapter really does, Jesse Snow from Boston Public Library wrote this chapter, and one of the things that this chapter really does is it explains what community engagement is, and that it looks at what it takes from the library staff person to actually engage with community, and how to assess what's going on and what's not going on, and make plans for that. And I also think it does a really good job at laying out the idea of what community is as well, and moving that forward. So what do you think, Shannon?
Anything else with that chapter? Yeah, man, there is, I mean, I could like space out to that chapter for a year. Exactly. I mean, there's so much in there. But you know, I guess I love the flow of these chapters and how themes kind of like start to layer on top of each other in really interesting ways. Like, I think in similar ways to Youth Voice, you know, it'd be easy to go out in the community and be like, what do you want us to do? We're the library, you know, we'll do anything. I love how she was very thoughtful about kind of mapping your community and understanding needs, but then developing your own learning, understanding your own bias, and kind of creating a plan, and a learning plan to help you like know how to get out there and know who you need to talk to, and know in what ways you might want to scaffold that process, from just getting feedback on whatever you're working on to actually getting out there and co-designing with a partner or a community group. So definitely a lot of continuous learning to think about in that chapter as well.
Yeah, we did a good job. It really does flow very nicely. Congratulations, Shannon.
Yes.
Because now the last chapter is on outcomes and assessment, and that's the one that we have 3 different authors who work together on it, and it's Amanda Wall, Natalie Green-Taylor, and Kelly Hoffman. I got that right. Yep. And one of the things that I think really works well is that we're doing all these things. We have Youth Voice, we're learning, we're building community, we're building learning experiences for youth. And how do we know we're successful? How do we assess that? And how do we decide what we're actually trying to achieve? Right. So when you're, to go back to the Youth Voice chapter, or even community engagement, how do we know what we want this to achieve? And then how do we assess that? And so that's what's covered in this last chapter by Amanda, Kelly, and Natalie. And I think one of the things that's really great about it is they talk about what this all is, outcomes and assessment, and how to build outcomes and think about creating outcomes. But they also give there's a great table in there where it says, okay, here a focus group. Here's what a focus group is, and here's when it's useful to do a focus group. So thinking about what you're trying to achieve, is a focus group the right way to go? Or do you go with a survey? Or do you go with observation? What do you do? So they really lay that out in a way that people can start to think, okay, here's what I'm working towards. Which of these assessment methods might be one that I think about using? So do you have further thoughts about that?
Yeah, I mean, I just love how they pulled together so many pieces. Like outcomes work is new enough in public libraries, at least. I know school libraries are further along in this than we are. That, you know, I know for me, I feel like I've been pulling outcomes work from all different kinds of after school fields and school and that kind of thing. And I love how they've pulled together like a lot of different elements and really demystified it. So it's like, it doesn't have to be this like huge system that you're creating right off the bat necessarily. It's like just starting with a survey and like being intentional about what tool is right for whatever program you're working on, whether it's just at the programmatic level or like an organizational level. So it doesn't feel so scary in the way that they wrote it. They did a great job with that.
That's great. Yeah. So those are our 5 chapters. And then in between each chapter, YALSA has case studies that are demonstrations of how the futures report is being implemented in libraries. And so in between each chapter, we have that. We have a few different appendices of the executive summary. I keep pointing at the futures report. The executive summary from this, the YALSA programming guidelines, and a couple of other things. So what else? What are we missing, Shannon?
What do you hope readers will get out of reading this?
Oh my goodness.
What outcome do you hope to see?
My hope is, and I think we were both there when we were thinking about what to put in this book and editing the chapters, is my hope is that people who read this book will have an understanding of these different pieces and know how, I don't know if know how to get started, but see the value of integrating youth voice, see the value of the ideas presented in the futures report and in this report. Really take to heart the importance of moving forward in teen services in perhaps a different way to help youth succeed in life through informal learning. So I think really feeling energized, empowered, which is a word I really hate, and excited by the ideas expressed. What about you? What do you want people to go away with?
Oh, I just wanted to put you on this one. You know what? Yes, all of those things. You know, I'm excited. I hope there's an opportunity with this to, you know, as I mentioned, I think the futures report kind of gave the field a vocabulary and a language, and I hope this continues to push that forward. And, you know, I think with the futures report, like it started to build community for this, for future focused work. So I think one of the things that I'm most excited about with this book is it reads to me like, I mean, I've really been thinking about a lot of these things, but you know, I find this book like accessible for me, and like it's making me think in different ways. But I also think it's approachable for someone who's brand new to these ideas. So I guess I hope it continues to build like our professional learning community and gives us just another tool to kind of push us to learn from each other and think about some of these things and push forward.
I wish I'd said that. That's awesome. But I really like that point that you could be at different levels. And one of the great things about an edited volume, of course, is that today you might be interested in youth voice, and a week from now or a month from now, you might be interested in community engagement. So it gives you the chance to learn about these different things in mind-sized bites. But I love that idea of it is accessible. When we were reading the chapters, it's like, oh, I didn't think about that. Yeah, that's true. So all different, if you're just learning about some of these things or feel like you have a little bit of experience, I think you'll get a good you'll want to read it no matter what.
Yeah. And I think that's a really good point. Like, these are big topics. Like, you know, there's a lot to this. And I feel like any of these chapters, I could read the chapter and look at the appendices for that, or the index for that chapter, and just think about that for a good I mean, I know that
for a year or two.
I mean, that could set you on a learning pathway that could, you know, you could go on for a very long time. So, you know, I think thinking about reading this in chunks, and like even like having a group among your colleagues, or, you know, in your social media space, whoever your personal learning network is, to kind of explore these in bite-sized pieces is a really good idea.
It's a good idea. All right, I think we've probably taken up our time.
Yeah.
But we want to say you should buy this book. It's available through the ALA store and probably other outlets as well. So thank you for spending a little time with us, learning about putting teens first in library services roadmap. Shannon, any final words?
Thanks for listening, and we can't wait to see what work you do.
Yeah, great. Bye, Shannon.
Bye.